Welcome to Asia House, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Xiang Bing, Founding Dean, Professor of China Business and Globalization at CKGSB. Dean Xiang is a leading authority on China business, innovations, and the globalization of Chinese companies, trade, and Sino-US relations. He's also a member of the Asia House Advisory Board, and I'm delighted that he can join us today. Dean Xiang, thanks very much for being with us. First question, what will be the next major development in China's digital transformation?
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Michael. Always nice to talk to you. And it's been privileged to be with Asia House for some time now. And I hope I can contribute my 2 cents in the future. And, the digital transformation will be a key thing to transform the economy broadly for decades to come. And then globally, I think maybe US and China are the leading ones, And then US, especially the unicorn companies, definitely driven by innovations, And in China, there's more and more innovations, but also there's imitation as well. Something coming up in the US today, and then China may imitate, adapt. When you have Uber in the US, we have Didi in China, for example, some of the recent examples. So China does have that advantage, sometimes being a follower, And also because China has a larger population, and also China contributed about 30% of the global economy. It does give the Chinese companies unique advantage in terms of the size of the market. And also being close to China, especially China, understand the local market better. Just leveraging Chinese market itself, you can become the largest company globally in this regard. So that's one reason why many of the Chinese companies choose not to go abroad. So they're so happy at home making serious money, and so that's the case in China. I think China and the US will continue to lead this digitalization, a digital transformation for maybe coming decade. At least that's the case for the past 10 years. That could be the case for next decade as well.
And is that going to continue to drive the sort of growth rates that China has experienced? I know it took a bit of a dent because of COVID, obviously, as the world economy has. But China's growth rates, if you look at a 30, 40-year period, has been absolutely staggering. Is this digital transformation and imitation going to continue to push China ahead economically at that sort of rate?
Looking forward, there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic. Firstly, Chinese ability, the company's ability to innovate have improved substantively. For many of the sectors, automobile, for example, definitely we're by far the largest market. The units of cars sold in China is bigger than the total of the US, Germany, and Japan. So number 2, number 3, number 4. So for those kind of sectors, if you don't innovate in China, you die. As simple as that. The best, the brightest, the players, are really in China market. So innovation will be a key for many sectors that are globally competitive, that's for sure. And the Chinese ability to innovate has improved substantively. Not only, number of patents filed the European side, being number 1 for many years, but, I think China will do well in innovation in the future. But another positive side is we have many sectors remain to be deregulated. You look at the financial sector, you look at even the car, automobile, the media, the sports, education, oil and gas, there's many sectors. So China can still grow its economy by a new round of deregulations. The deregulation has been a key element, such as neoliberalism. So this neoliberalism has been sort of a spent force in the US, in UK, but definitely we have many miles left. The Chinese government can leverage on this new round of deregulation to grow its economy. On top of this, innovation-driven, digitalization-driven. So that's one reason why we need to be really optimistic about the
Yes.
Chinese economic prospect. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's not only digitalization and innovation, it's also
multiple
deregulation,
drivers.
which will help drive
Yeah.
growth. Is China leading the world in digitalization? Every country we talk to, especially because of COVID, has a digital strategy, a digital program.
Yes.
Is China the number one in digital transformation? And if so, will it remain so?
No, the B2B side, maybe the Americans still dominating. I think, 2C side, definitely China has some edge in that regard because the market itself, because, our previous infrastructure was not in place, the mobile payments, for example, so we're far ahead of any other country, in many of the major cities in China, you can go out without cash, just one phone taking care of all the payments, So yes, we have some advantages, but definitely Americans companies have a lot of core capabilities in the groundbreaking innovations, the core technology, core patents. US still definitely on average, US is leading. Okay, but China become a key driver now. That's the fact,
The tensions between the US and China are well documented and they're very high at the moment. Is the digital transformation of China, and I guess the rest of the world, likely to escalate those tensions? Because a lot of it has been around technology transfer. So as China goes down the path of this rapid digital transformation, is that positive or negative for the relationship with the US?
I think, after some of the companies in China doing well, performed well, there will be a globalization drive. So this Chinese companies, whether it's Alibaba or Tencent or Didi, they TikTok, for example, another example. So they will have the globalization drive. I think TikTok a really beautiful example in the sense its impact is far more global than, for example, Alibaba or Tencent in that regard. Its popularity, its ability being to penetrate in many global markets, So in that regard, it's very unique Chinese company, So the Chinese company will need to leverage resource globally, not only to compete in China and to compete in global market. That's the basic human right of any Chinese companies, right? Like American companies. So they will go global. Of course, with today's geopolitical situation, especially the decoupling between China and US, and there's talking about bifurcated market for technologies, for data, for markets, could be a huge hindrance for such an experiment, And accordingly, I think number one is no good for innovations. And second, no good for a broader market to enjoy the benefits of innovations, And then so it'll increase the price, the cost, all kinds of product services globally. So I hope, the number one, number two economy can work together, like China, US, work together, not only for the benefits of the Chinese Americans, but also for humanities as well. So I think in the future, the cross-border data issue will be a key issue of sensitivity and debates and controversy. I think we need a really international global standard in that regard, rather than letting two countries arguing with each other. So the global standards needed.
Can I touch briefly now on China's digital currency, the central bank's digital currency? We've done a bit of work on that. And China is well ahead, well advanced compared with other nations in terms of piloting digital currencies. What impact will a central bank digital currency have on business in China? And does China have that first mover advantage?
Oh, I'm not an expert on digital currency. Definitely from the business I'm talking to, they definitely can bring down the transaction cost or improve the security issue. But at the same time, it's also enhance this transparency issue of all kinds of transactions in the face of government. So sometimes it's also a concern.
You've spoken much about China's economic disruptions and their impact on China. What's the next disruption that we should be looking for?
I think for broadly speaking, well, firstly, let me define the economic disruption because the new terminology, people often talk about innovation. Innovation and disruption are different things. China for the past 2 decades is unrivaled in terms of sustained and continued disruption, unmatched in scale. If you look at newly emerged large-scale companies, as measured by Fortune Global, Chinese increased from 11 to 117, 11 from 2000 to 117 last year, or newly minted billionaires. I mean, last year, China's contribution to new billionaire was about 40% of global, So this, and also the disruption in the table of 10 richest people in China, every 5-10 years, you see a sea change in these tables as well. So this kind of disruption is good in the sense of providing a chance for young people to move up. All of a sudden, people out of the blue. You don't see that in Europe. You look at 30 rich people in Europe, you don't see much change. And you don't see that much in Japan. For India, a similar size population, the extent of disruption in China far exceeded that of India. So not just the size of population issue. We started roughly similar GDP in 1978. And then, so come down to disruption. To me, I think is one element of the Chinese way in developing economy, which should be shared globally. Because if you don't provide economic disruption, the young people may not have much a chance moving up socially, economically. So if that's the case, whether you're a liberal democracy or authoritarian, a developing economy, a developed economy like France, Chile, you could have serious challenges for social mobility. So I see this continued ability to generate economic disruption is a key to the future, is a key. So in the case of China, my read is this. Number one, new round of deregulations will provide flood of opportunity for Chinese entrepreneur to use imitation strategy. Because you have the sector in the US, in Europe, they have been doing well for decades. Why don't you imitate first? The business model has been tested, right? So you imitate. So imitation strategy will be the key for this newly deregulated sector, maybe 20, 30 of them with the new round of deregulations. Of course, for the sectors that are already globally competitive, got to be innovation driven. So this depends on the sectors, Yeah. So I do believe, I'm positive China will lead, continue to lead for the coming decades in terms of generating new rounds of economic disruptions. You look at the Meituan, Pinduoduo, you know what I mean? So one by one, like the TikToks, I mean, coming from nowhere. We thought, oh my God, Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, we're dominant. No, the new kids on the block. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Give young people a chance. Say, oh, he can make it. I can make it. I don't have to rock the boat. I have a chance. My father didn't have a chance. I may have a shot. That's essential.
Let's turn now, just before we wrap up, to geopolitics. And as we mentioned earlier, huge amount of tension between the US and China, well documented talks going on in a way which seem to have started off on a fairly tense note. Are China and the US on a collision course?
Well, definitely we don't have to. I don't think the Thucydides trap idea we capture today's relation between China and the US. For the reason, number one, US will be dominating military power for decades to come. I mean, any emerging power, China, India, Africa continent, to think about non-peaceful way of rising is suicidal, And secondly, with the nuclear weapon, mutually assured mutual disruption, the destruction. So it's not wise. And thirdly, look at the US experience in the past decades, using its superior military power to realize its geopolitical interest, objective in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Even American friends said, well, we won the battle, we lost the war. So I think any country in the future, if you want to use military instrument to settle your geopolitical issues, you got to think twice, okay? So emergence of any rising power, including China, must be peaceful one. And also the class civilization argument, to me, is not making much sense, at least to me personally. I see Japan as a beautiful example of integration of Confucian value and Western value as well, a Confucian tradition with Western values. I see the case of Singapore, and then is rule of law is not, is considered in the West by some, not a liberal democracy, even authoritarian by some. But it has rule of law, it's the state capitalism, People's Action Party has been the ruling party 1959. So this rule of law and then one party rule not necessarily in conflict with each other. So I think if China and US can agree on terms of rule of law, and the rule of law was listed out by President Xi Jinping as his top priority, I think I'm hopeful there's a way forward to be positive, to be constructive, because a positive constructive relation between China and US is a necessary condition for global governance, for reconfiguration global trading system, for the climate change, for the rejuvenation global economy after COVID is absolutely a must. Okay. So we have, I would say, no plan B. This only plan A, sit down, talk. This is your interest, this is my interest. We need to find more common ground. We try to find more common ground to work together.
Well, on that note, we need to wrap up. Dr. Xiang Bing from CKGSB, thank you very much for joining us. Take very good care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.